Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do something that I find exciting. I find it so exciting that lately I have taken to doing 3 exciting upcoming book release videos. I used to only do 1 in the beginning of the year, and somewhere along the way that changed. I think for about 2 years now, I have done 1 in the beginning of the year and 1 for the second half of the year. And then this year I did 1 in the middle of the year to cover all of those months because, new books are announced and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. So we're here to talk about some exciting books that will be released in the second half of 2024. This is a big time of year. A lot of big, heavy-hitting books by authors you know and love usually come out in the run-up to the holiday season. Yes, we are technically in the run-up to the holiday season. Don't be mad at me. It's just the calendar. And we'll be talking about a lot of these. You may not see some of the big names on my list because I'm planning to do a follow-up video where I talk about some books that are coming that maybe you'd be interested in, but I'm holding off for one reason or another, or am kind of waiting for more information about. So if you don't see Richard Powers, Haruki Murakami, Sally Rooney, Rumaan Alam, Yoko Ogawa on this list, it's because they're coming in a different one. Just know that there are books by those people coming out. I'm going to cover them in a different video. I will have links to all of these books, except for one that is not on bookshop.org for some reason yet, in the description box down below. If I inspire you to think about purchasing any of these books, you can use those affiliate links. Bookshop.org supports bookstores. I would also get a little bit of a kickback, so that helps me out. Or you can support your local independent bookstore on your own, or you can support your library. That is always a wonderful thing to do. I don't want to get into it because we have a lot of books to cover here, but I know there are a lot of people who aren't a big fan of book haul videos because it supports this sort of consumer culture type thing. I look at book hauls the same way I look at long list reaction videos, the same way I look at videos like this. Tools of discovery. Just because I'm interested in these books doesn't mean you have to be. And if you are, it doesn't mean you have to purchase them. I also can look for things at my library. I can look for things on subscription apps I have, like Scribd, which is not actually Scribd anymore. I will never remember what the new name is. Or Libby, which is affiliated with my library. I have a subscription to Libro, so I could always cash in a credit for an audiobook. These are things that you can do rather than just run out and purchase a book if you don't want to. But the other thing is sometimes it's good to support a book and a publisher if you want to see more books like that. So if you can, it's not a bad thing to do, but you're also not required. Again, libraries are a good thing to support. So whatever way you can, if you're interested in these books, I encourage you to do so. Pre-ordering is very important because it lets bookstores know what books you're interested in. It lets publishers know how much of a book they should print or if they might need to do a reprint anytime soon. It just helps a lot. It also really helps authors. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in any of these books, pre-order away if you are in a position where you are able to make a purchase for them. That's my little PSA and my soapbox for the day. There are 2 books that I had talked about in my last most anticipated books video that have not been released yet. So I want to quickly open with those. I'm not going to talk about them. I will have links to the video that I did at the beginning of 2024 and at the middle. And the one in the middle will cover these 2 books. I actually have a copy, an advanced reader's copy of one of them. It's We Burn Daylight by Brett Anthony Johnston. Really looking forward to this. Again, if you want more information, including release date, check out the video down below. The other is Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. I will actually also include a link to the video that I did for the second half of 2023, because when I did that video, it turned out the book that ultimately went on to win the Pulitzer Prize for fiction was in that video. And is that going to happen again this year? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But it's fun to dream and wonder, isn't it? Let's get in because, as I said, we have a lot of books to cover, and I'm going to go in chronological order. I wanted to get this video out quickly because by the time you watch this, if you watch this video the week that it is released, some of these books will actually be coming out. So we're going to start with those books, and we're going to work our way further out to the end of the year. The first book that I want to talk about is Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser Akner. Taffy Brodesser-Akner is an author who really stood out to me when I was looking at upcoming releases because there is a bit of a Pulitzer thought in my head. I think Percival Everett is like front of mind for anybody who is thinking about Pulitzer odds for next year. However, it can often happen that someone will publish a book that is sort of critically appraised or kind of gains more of a following over time, and then they end up winning for their next book or their next book. And Fleischman is in Trouble. It definitely would fit that mold. It was well received when it was published, but it feels like it has really only grown in the estimation of people out there since it was published. And so there's sort of a Pulitzer narrative that you could attach to this book. We're going to have to wait and see if it's good. But Long Island Compromise is something that sounds interesting as well. So this is going to be released on July 9th from Random House. So the week after this video gets posted, it will be released. Here is what it is about. In 1980, a wealthy businessman named Carl Fletcher is kidnapped from his driveway, brutalized, and held for ransom. He is returned to his wife and kids less than a week later, only slightly the worse, and the family moves on with their lives, resuming their prized places in the saga of the American dream, comforted in the realization that though their money may have been what endangered them, it is also what assured their safety. But now, nearly 40 years later, it's clear that perhaps nobody ever got over anything after all. Carl has spent the ensuing years secretly seeking closure to the matter of his kidnapping, while his wife, Ruth, has spent her potential protecting her husband's emotional health. Their 3 grown children aren't doing much better. Nathan's chronic fear won't allow him to advance in his law firm. Beamer, a Hollywood screenwriter, will consume anything, substance, foodstuff, women, in order to numb his own perpetual terror, and Jenny has spent her life so bent on proving that she's not a product of her family's pathology that she has come to define it. As they hover at the delicate precipice of a different kind of survival, they learn that the family fortune has dwindled to just about nothing, and they must face desperate questions about how much their wealth has played a part in both their lives' successes and failures. Long Island Compromise spans the entirety of one family's history, winding through decades and generations all the way to the outrageous present and confronting the mainstays of American Jewish life. Tradition, the pursuit of success, the terror of history, fear of the future, old wives' tales, evil eyes, ambition, boredom, inheritance, pyramid schemes, right-wing capitalists, beta blockers, psychics, and the mostly unspoken love and shared experience that unite a family forever. The fact that this seems to be trying to tell a very American story also means that there's a Pulitzer conversation to have that is attached to this book. Will we get there? I don't know. I think this could be a contender for like the National Book Award and maybe some big book lists at the end of the year when we start having conversations about the best books of the year. And it just sounds really interesting. If you know me, you know I love a complicated family story. I am really growing to appreciate books that grapple with emotional trauma that has been dealt to us and how we recover or don't recover from that over time. That is something that immediately makes me interested in a book. So it really grabbed my attention with Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser-Akner, which again will be published on July 9th from Random House. Let's move on to the next book, which is sort of tied to the fact that Joel and I went to Ireland and Scotland earlier this year. It's The Heart in Winter by Kevin Barry. Kevin Barry is an Irish author, and I actually thought about getting some of his books while we were in Ireland, but his books are available here in the United States and tend to be, so I kind of held off. And I still haven't read The Night Boat to Tangier, which I should. Heart in Winter sounds really interesting as well. It will be released on July 9th as well, from Doubleday Books. Here is what it is about. And there's a Montana connection. I live in Montana, so it's like my Ireland vacation crossing where I live, and that seems fascinating to me. Award-winning writer Kevin Barry's first novel set in America, a savagely funny and achingly romantic tale of young lovers on the lam in 1890s Montana. October 1891. A hard winter approaches across the Rocky Mountains. The city of Butte, Montana is rich on copper mines and rampant with vice and debauchery among a hard-living crowd of immigrant Irish workers. Here we find Tom Rourke, a young poet and ballad maker of the town, but also a doper, a drinker, and a fearsome degenerate. Just as he feels his life is heading nowhere fast, Polly Gillespie arrives in town as the new bride of the extremely devout mine captain Long Anthony Harrington. A thunderbolt love affair takes spark between Tom and Polly, and they strike out west on a stolen horse, moving through the Badlands of Montana and Idaho. And briefly, an idyll of wild romance perfects itself, but a posse of deranged Cornish gunmen are soon in hot pursuit and closing in fast. With everything to lose and the safety and anonymity of San Francisco still a distant speck on the horizon, the choices they make will haunt them for the rest of their lives. In this love story for the ages, lyrical, profane, and propulsive, Kevin Barry has once again demonstrated himself to be a master stylist, an unrivaled humorist, and a true poet of the human heart. I think you can see again why I am interested in this book, which again will be published on July 9th. So coming very quickly if you watch this video the day that it is released. Now, speaking of my Ireland and Scotland vacation, I'm going to be insufferable about that all year, probably longer. Let me tell you about Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna. This is something that I saw everywhere, in pretty much every bookstore that we walked into in Ireland and Scotland. This book was just recently released over there when Joel and I were in the country, and it has a different cover. And I really thought about purchasing it, but while I was in Ireland and Scotland, I was trying to purchase books that I wouldn't really be able to find in the United States. And when I looked a little closer at Evenings and Weekends, I saw that it is going to be released in the United States on July 2nd. So I'm actually a little out of order, and this has already been released by the time you watch this video. It's fine. We're going to stick with it because I really found this book interesting. I got so many recommendations for this book from people over in Ireland and Scotland, and it seemed like a lot of booksellers in all of the bookshops that we went to were really enthusiastic about this book. So I am interested, and even though it has just been released, I'm going to include it in this video. So it's my video, my rules. Here's what it is about. For fans of Sally Rooney and Torrey Peters. Now, I haven't read Torrey Peters, and I'm not that much of a fan of Sally Rooney, but we're going to go with this. A stunning debut that follows a vibrant, multi-generational cast of characters through a London heatwave as their simmering tensions and secrets come to a head over a feverish, life-changing weekend. Summer in London stops for no one. Not the half-naked drunks and stoners, the bachelorette parties glugging from bejeweled bottles, the drag queens puffing on hurried cigarettes. It's June 2019, and everyone has converged in the city's parks, beer gardens, and street corners to revel in the collective joys of being alive. Everyone but Maggie. She's 30, pregnant, and broke. Faced with moving back to the town she fought to escape, she's wondering if having a baby with boyfriend Ed will be the last spontaneous act of her life. Ed, meanwhile, is trying to run from his past with Maggie's best friend Phil and harboring secret dreams of his own. Phil hates his office job and is living for the weekend while falling for his housemate Keith. But there's a problem. Keith has a boyfriend, and there might not be room for 3 people in the relationship. Then there's Rosaline, Phil's mother, who's tired of feeling like a side character in her own life. She's just been diagnosed with cancer and is traveling to London to tell Phil if she can ever get a hold of him. As Saturday night approaches, all their lives are set to change forever. Temperatures are soaring and the weekend is about to begin. Strikingly heartfelt, sexually charged, and disarmingly comic, Oisin McKenna's debut is a mesmerizing dive into the soul of a city and a searing look at what it takes to build a life there. And that sounds fascinating to me. So even though I haven't really got on with Sally Rooney and that is kind of the direct comparison that this book is making, I'm really invested in this and reading this. And I heard a lot of great things from Irish booksellers about this and Scottish booksellers. So really looking forward to Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna, published by Mariner Books on July 2nd. So you can run out and grab a copy of that book immediately if you are so inclined after watching this video. Next, we have The Most by Jessica Anthony. This is going to be published on July 30th by Little Brown and Company. So now we're moving to books that are coming a little bit further away into the future. And this sounds really interesting as well. You can probably guarantee that I find all of these books interesting. I'm including them in my list. Here's what this one is about. It is an unseasonably warm Sunday in November 1957. Kathleen, a college tennis champion turned Delaware housewife, decides not to join her flagrantly handsome life insurance salesman husband, Virgil, or their 2 young boys at church. Instead, she takes a dip in the kidney-shaped swimming pool of their apartment complex, and then she won't come out. A riveting single-sitting read set over the course of 8 hours, the most, breaches the shimmering surface of a seemingly idyllic mid-century marriage, immersing us in the unspoken truth beneath. As Sputnik 2 orbits the Earth carrying Laika, the doomed Soviet dog, Kathleen and Virgil hurtle toward each other until they arrive at a reckoning that will either shatter their marriage or transform it at last into something else. Of course, I'm concerned about the dog, although that's historical, so we know the story already. I think the thing that helps me get over that concern about a dog in distress is that it's probably a small part of this book. And this is a really short book. It's 144 pages. So hopefully it'll be fine. But I really have been gravitating towards short books in recent years. And the fact that this seems like a short, sharp book really sounds fascinating to me. So I'm inclined to include it on this list of my most anticipated books coming in the latter part of the year. That is The Most by Jessica Anthony, coming on July 30th, 2024 from Little Brown and Company. And with that, we get to Mammoth by Eva Baltazar and translated by Julia Sanchez. This one, I fully admit, is mostly on my list and on my radar because of Boulder, which was Eva Baltazar's previous book, published in English at least, which was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize. I read it. I loved it. It's a short, powerful read, and this seems like it's going to be in the same vein. It is only 144 pages. It will be released on August 6th, published by a publisher called And Other Stories. Here is what this is about. The follow-up novel to International Booker shortlisted Boulder is a story of queer motherhood and survival deep in the countryside. And if you read Boulder, you know that queer motherhood is apparently a big topic of conversation for Eva Baltazar. Mammoth's protagonist is a disenchanted young lesbian. She's inexperienced, irritated by life, eager to gestate, and determined to strip everything else down to essentials. She seduces men at random, swaps her urban habitat for an isolated farmhouse, befriends a shepherd, nurses lambs, battles stray cats, waits tables, cleans houses, and dabbles in sex work, all in pursuit of life in the raw. This small bomb of a novel, not remotely pastoral, builds to a howling crescendo of social despair, leaving us at the mercy of Eva Baltazar's wild voice. I'm fascinated. So that will be out on August 6th from And Other Stories. Looking forward to that. I actually recommended to my library that they purchase a copy of Boulder, and they did. So maybe I'll have a little bit of luck with Mammoth as well. We'll have to see how that goes. The next one is something I wasn't too sure about, but I saw a review in Kirkus that really grabbed my attention. It's Highway 13, Stories by Fiona McFarlane. This will be published on August 13th by FSG. Here is the description. A gripping, enigmatic collection of linked short stories about the reverberations of a serial killer's crimes in the lives of everyday people. Now, that's what got me about this book. Because at first, when I was reading the review, it sounded a little bit like true crime, thrillery, and I was not into that. But as soon as it started talking about how it explores the ramifications of a crime and how those ramifications kind of ripple out into the present or into the future, I was really hooked because it seems like it takes the victim's perspective or the family of the victim's perspective, kind of shifts around and plays with what happens when a crime occurs. And that is interesting to me. That's why I like The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. So this is like a fictional version of it. In 1998, an apparently ordinary Australian man is arrested and charged for a series of brutal murders. The news shocks the nation, bringing both horror and resolution to the victims' families. But its impact travels even further, into the past as the murders rewrite personal histories, and into the future as true crime podcasts and biopics tell the story of the crimes. Highway 13, Fiona McFarlane's newest collection, takes murder as its starting point, but it unfolds to encompass much more. Through the investigation of the aftermath of this violence across time and place, from the killer's childhood town to Texas, Rome, and tropical northern Australia, McFarlane presents an oblique, entrancing exploration of the way stories are told and spread, and at what cost. What damages, big and small, do these crimes incur? How do communities make sense of such atrocities? How does the mourning of families sit alongside the public fascination with terrible crimes? And can we tell true crime stories without centering the killers? From the acclaimed author of The Sun Walks Down and The High Places comes a captivating account of loss and its extended echoes in individual lives. And I especially love that pointed part about true crime, because so much of true crime feels sort of lurid and sensationalistic and kind of glorifies the person who commits the crime. And I like it to be done with a little more thought and nuance. So this sounds like something that would be absolutely fascinating to me. It is Highway 13, a collection of linked stories by Fiona McFarlane, coming on August 13th by FSG. Moving right along, we get to The Hypocrite by Joe Hamya. This is going to be published on August 13th as well from Pantheon. August 2020, Sophia, a young playwright, awaits her father's verdict on her new show. A famous author whose novels haven't aged as gracefully into the modern era as he might have hoped, he is completely unaware that the play centers around a vacation the two took years earlier to an island off of Sicily, where he dictated to her a new book. Sophia's play has been met with rave reviews, but her father has studiously avoided reading any of them. When the house lights dim, however, he understands that his daughter has laid him bare, has used the events of their summer to create an incisive, witty, skewering critique of the attitudes and sexual mores of men of his generation. Set through one staging of the play, The Hypocrite seamlessly and scorchingly shifts time and perspective, illuminating an argument between a father and his daughter that, with impeccable nuance, examines the fraught inheritances each generation is left to contend with and the struggle to nurture empathy in a world changing at lightning speed. Now, I already said I am really into books about complicated families and things like that, so yes, I'm interested in this. It kind of reminds me of The Wren by Anne Enright, which I still have not caught up to and would like to, in that it is also about a famous writer and the complicated relationship that he has had with his daughter, but probably very different. So really looking forward to The Hypocrite by Joe Hamya. Again, this will be published on August 13th by Pantheon. And we can move to the next book right now because we got to get a lot of books in. Next is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. This is going to be published on August 20th by Knopf. And I admit, I feel like I'm a bit more likely to go back and read some books of Elif Shafak's that I have missed, such as 10 Minutes, 38 Seconds in This Strange World, which was a Booker shortlisted title. But this does sound really interesting to me. Here is the description. In the ancient city of Nineveh, on the bank of the river Tigris, King Ashurbanipal of Mesopotamia, erudite but ruthless, built a great library that would crumble with the end of his reign. From its ruins, however, emerged a poem, the Epic of Gilgamesh, that would infuse the existence of two rivers and bind three lives. In 1840 London, Arthur is born beside the stinking, sewage-filled River Thames. With an abusive alcoholic father and a mentally ill mother, Arthur's only chance of escaping destitution is his brilliant memory. When his gift earns him a spot as an apprentice at a leading publisher, Arthur's world opens up beyond the slums, and one book in particular catches his interest, Nineveh and Its Remains. In 2014 Turkey, Naren, a 10-year-old Yazidi girl, is diagnosed with a rare disorder that will soon cause her to go deaf. Before that happens, her grandmother is determined to baptize her in a sacred Iraqi temple. But with the rising presence of ISIS and the destruction of the family's ancestral lands along the Tigris, Naren is running out of time. In 2018 London, the newly divorced Salika, a hydrologist, moves into a houseboat on the Thames to escape her husband. Orphaned and raised by her wealthy uncle, Zalika had made the decision to take her own life in 1 month, until a curious book about her homeland changes everything. A dazzling feat of storytelling, There Are Rivers in the Sky entwines these outsiders with a single drop of water, a drop which remanifests across the centuries, both a source of life and a harbinger of death. Rivers, the Tigris and the Thames, transcend history, transcend fate. Water remembers, it is humans who forget. That is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, published August 20th by Knopf, and sounds really interesting. And I do think I would probably want to catch up to at least 10 minutes, 38 seconds in This Strange World, but I could really be convinced to jump to this one because it really just sounds absolutely fascinating. That takes us to Small Rain by Garth Greenwell, which will be published on September 3rd by FSG. I actually have an advanced reader's copy. This is not what the final book is going to look like. This is what the final book is going to look like. I'm actually going to leave that up since I had to show it to you anyway, and that is kind of what the book will be. So again, September 3rd by FSG. A medical crisis brings one man close to death and to love art and beauty in a profound and luminous novel by award-winning author Garth Greenwell. A poet's life is turned inside out by a sudden, wrenching pain. The pain brings him to his knees and eventually to the ICU. Confined to bed, plunged into the dysfunctional American healthcare system, he struggles to understand what is happening to his body as someone who has lived for many years in his mind. This is a searching, sweeping novel set at the furthest edges of human experience, where the forces that give life value, art, memory, poetry, music, care, are thrown into sharp relief. Time expands and contracts. Sudden intimacies bloom. Small Rain surges beyond the hospital to encompass a radiant vision of human life, our shared vulnerability, the limits and possibilities of sympathy, the ideal of art, and the fragile dream of America. Above all, this is a love story of the most unexpected kind. I think you can see why that sounds interesting. Again, September 3rd by FSG. I am lucky enough to have been sent an advanced reader's copy of it. Thank you, FSG, for that. I actually have not read a Garth Greenwell book, and I think it's about time I dip my toe into that water and see how I feel about his work. I've heard some mixed things about his previous books, but I'm very willing to go along on the ride. I have also not read anything by Rachel Kushner yet. I probably should catch up to like The Flamethrowers, but Creation Lake is going to be published on September 3rd by Scribner, and it sounds really interesting, so I might just jump to this new book instead. Here is what this one is about. Creation Lake is a novel about a secret agent, a 34-year-old American woman of ruthless tactics, bold opinions, and clean beauty who is sent to do dirty work in France. Sadie Smith is how the narrator introduces herself to her lover, to the rural commune of French subversives on whom she is keeping tabs, and to the reader. Sadie has met her love, Lucien, a young and well-born Parisian, by cold bump, making him believe the encounter was accidental. Like everyone Sadie targets, Lucien is useful to her and used by her. Sadie operates by strategy and dissimulation based on what her contacts, shadowy figures in business and government, instruct. First, these contacts want her to incite provocation. Then they want more. In this region of centuries-old farms and ancient caves, Sadie becomes entranced by a mysterious figure named Bruno Lacombe, a mentor to the young activist who communicates only by email. Bruno believes that the path to emancipation from what ails modern life is not revolt, but a return to the ancient past. Just as Sadie is certain she's the seductress and puppet master of those she surveils, Bruno Lacombe is seducing her with his ingenious counter-histories, his artful laments, his own tragic story. Written in short, vaulting sections, Rachel Kushner's rendition of Noir is taut and dazzling. Creation Lake is Kushner's finest achievement yet as a novelist, a work of high art, high comedy, and unforgettable pleasure. Again, Creation Lake will be coming September 3rd by Scribner, and September is going to be a big month for books, so buckle up. Another book, by the way, that had or has a Pulitzer conversation that could be attached to it. Rachel Kushner is a celebrated author, but hasn't really been recognized by that yet. So it will be interesting to see what happens with that. Now we have The Amendments by Niamh Mulvey, and this will be published on September 3rd by Picador UK. Here's what this says. Delving into the lives of 3 generations of women, The Amendments is an extraordinary novel about love and freedom, belonging and rebellion, and about how our past is a vital presence which sits alongside us. Nell and her partner Adrian are about to have a baby. For Adrian, it's the start of a new life. For Nell, it's the reason the two of them are sitting in a therapist's office, because she can't go into this without dealing with the truth, that she has been a mother before, and now she can hardly bring herself to speak to her own mother, let alone return home to Ireland. Nell is running out of places to hide from her past. But to Ireland and the past is where she must go, and that is where the amendments takes us. To the heat of Nell's teenage years in the early 2000s as Ireland was unpicking itself from its faith and embracing the hedonism of the Celtic tiger. To 1983 when Nell's mother Dolores was grappling with the tensions of the women's rights movement. And then to the farms and suburbs and towns that made and unmade the lives at the center of this story, bound together by the terrible secret that Nell still cannot face. So again, complicated family story, grappling with emotional trauma from the past, and it's pretty much ticking all of my boxes. It's even Irish, which I'm really into this year. So, The Amendments by Niamh Mulvey will be published on September 3rd by Picador UK. And I think it sounds fascinating. Hopefully you agree. That takes us to Somewhere Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune. Now, if you follow along, you know I read The House in the Cerulean Sea, and I loved it. I've been meaning to read something else by T.J. Klune ever since. He has Under the Whispering Door, which sounds really good. Joel read it and liked it, but this is a sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, so I'm pretty all in on this. It will be published by Tor Books on September 10th, and here is the description. A magical house, a secret past, a summons that could change everything. Arthur Parnassus lives a good life built on the ashes of a bad one. He's the headmaster of a strange orphanage on a distant and peculiar island, and he hopes to soon be the adoptive father to the 6 dangerous and magical children who lived there. Arthur works hard and loves with his whole heart, so none of the children ever feel the neglect and pain that he once felt as an orphan on that very same island so long ago. He is not alone. Joining him is the love of his life, Linus Baker, a former caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. And there's the island's sprite, Zoe Chapelwhite, and her girlfriend, Mayor Helen Webb. Together, they will do anything to protect the children. But when Arthur is summoned to make a public statement about his dark past, he finds himself at the helm of a fight for the future that his family and all magical people deserve. And when a new magical child hopes to join them on their island home, one who finds power in calling himself a monster, a name that Arthur worked so hard to protect his children from, Arthur knows they're at a breaking point. Their family will either grow stronger than ever or fall apart. Welcome back to Marseilles Island. This is Arthur's story. Somewhere Beyond the Sea is a story of resistance lovingly told about the daunting experience of fighting for the life you want to live and doing the work to keep it. I'm all in. One of the things I really loved about The House in the Cerulean Sea was the way it talked about care and treatment of children, especially children who are a little different. It really spoke to me as a former foster father, and I'm really looking forward to this. So Somewhere Beyond the Sea will be out on September 10th from Tor Books, and that one, if any book on this list is an absolute gimme, it's this one. Let's move on, though, to The Women Behind the Door by Roddy Doyle, an Irish author and a winner of the Booker Prize. And I didn't catch up to him before I went to Ireland. I really wanted to read The Commitments. I still really want to read The Commitments, but there's a new book coming and it sounds really interesting. So The Women Behind the Door will be published on September 10th by Viking. Did I mention September is a packed month? It usually is, and this year will be no exception. At 66, Paula Spencer, mother, grandmother, widow, addict, survivor, has finally started to live her life. She has a job at the dry cleaners she enjoys. Her boyfriend, Joe, is a text away when she needs him. And her 4 children now have the healthy families and petty dramas that Paula could have only hoped for. Despite its ghosts, Paula has started to push her past aside. That is until her eldest, Nicola, turns up on her doorstep one day. Nicola is everything Paula wasn't. Independent, affluent, a loving wife and mother, a success. But now she is suddenly determined to leave it all behind. She has left her family and come to stay. As Nicola gradually confides in Paula the secret that unleashed this moment of crisis, mother and daughter must untangle past memory, trauma, and revelations to confront what they mean to each other and who they want to be. A timely and powerful novel of regrets, reparations, and reconciliations, The Women Behind the Door is a delicately devastating portrait of shame and the inescapable shadow it casts over families. Many readers will welcome the chance to reconnect with this strong, singular character whom we have seen in The Women Who Walked Into Doors and Paula Spencer, but all readers will be glad to have Paula in their life now. Now, I haven't read those other books, so I can't really say if this is a book you can jump to. I might be wanting to do that. I probably should go back and read the commitments. I don't know. I haven't figured out where I stand with the history of Roddy Doyle's writing. And if I need to catch up on 2 books before I read this one, it would probably be fine. But if you've read The Women in the Door, like if you have an advanced copy of it, I don't actually know if this is available in the UK or not. Let me know what you think in the description box down below, because I'm thinking I'd probably start with the commitments anyway. But this does sound like an interesting book, which will be out on September 10th again. So I am not going to count it out for anything. And that takes us to a new Louise Erdrich book, The Mighty Red. This will be published on October 1st by Harper. Louise Erdrich is, I would say of late, she's been a bit uneven. I was not actually a fan of her Pulitzer Prize winning novel, The Night Watch. I didn't really enjoy the book that she published after that. I think it was called The Sentence, which was set in a bookstore during the pandemic. But I have loved a lot of Louise Erdrich's older books. I think Love Medicine is tremendous. A Plague of Doves is wonderful. Roundhouse is good. So I have like all of her books. So you can imagine I'm all over getting a copy of this one. I will say this is a little shallow. I'm not a huge fan of the cover, but it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, here's what this one is about. I am on a Louise Erdrich journey. She is an author I would like to read, even though I have found her work to be a bit uneven. But we'll see what happens. In this stunning novel, Pulitzer Prize and National Book Award winning author Louise Erdrich tells a story of love, natural forces, spiritual yearnings, and the tragic impact of uncontrollable circumstances on ordinary people's lives. In Argus, North Dakota, a collection of people revolve around a fraught wedding. Gary Geist, a terrified young man set to inherit 2 farms, is desperate to marry Kismet Poe, an impulsive, lapsed goth who can't read her future, but seems to resolve his. Hugo, a gentle, red-haired, homeschooled giant, is also in love with Kismet. He's determined to steal her and is eager to be a homewrecker. Kismet's mother, Crystal, hauls sugar beets for Gary's family, and on her nightly runs, tunes into the darkness of late-night radio, sees visions of guardian angels, and worries for the future, her daughter's and her own. Human time, deep time, Red River time, the half-life of herbicides and pesticides, and the elegance of time represented in fracking core samples from unimaginable depths is set against the speed of climate change, the depletion of natural resources, and the sudden economic meltdown of 2008 to 2009. How much does a dress cost? A used car? A package of cinnamon rolls? Can you see the shape of your soul in the ever-changing clouds? Your personal salvation in the giant expanse of sky? These are the questions the people of the Red River Valley of the North wrestle with every day. The Mighty Red is a novel of tender humor, disturbance, and hallucinatory mourning. It is about the on-the-job pains and immeasurable satisfactions, a turbulent landscape, and eating the native weeds growing in your backyard. It is about ordinary people who dream, grow, fall in love, struggle, endure tragedy, carry bitter secrets, men and women both complicated and contradictory, flawed and decent, lonely and hopeful. It is about a starkly beautiful prairie community whose members must cope with devastating consequences as powerful forces upend them. As with every book this great modern master writes, The Mighty Red is about our tattered bond with the earth and about love in all of its absurdity and splendor. I mean, it sounds like it's doing a lot, for sure. I don't know where it's going to stand in the kind of roller coaster that I'm on with Louise Erdrich. When she's on, she's on. And I am always going to be hopeful that this will be a case where she is on. So, therefore, it fits my most anticipated books for the rest of 2024. That takes us to a nonfiction book, which is The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This will be out on October 1st from One World. This work from one of the country's most important writers is about the urgent need to untangle ourselves from the destructive nationalist myths that shape our world and our own souls and embrace the liberating power of even the most difficult truths. I read Between the World and Me and thought it was great. And I haven't read anything else by Ta-Nehisi Coates at this point, and I would really like to. So this book coming out on October 1st seems like a good way to sort of dive back into those waters. Now we get to the book that, for whatever reason, is not actually on bookshop.org. It's Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst, and this will be coming out on October 8th by Penguin Random House. Dave Wynn, the son of a British dressmaker and a Burmese man he's never met, is 13 years old when he gets a scholarship to a top boarding school. With the doors of elite English society cracked open for him, heady new possibilities emerge, even as Dave is exposed to the envy and viciousness of his wealthy classmates, above all that of Giles Hadlow, whose worldly parents sponsored the scholarship and who find in Dave someone they can more easily nurture than their own brutish son. Our Evenings follows Dave from the 1960s on through the possibilities that remained open for him and others that proved to be illusory. As a working-class brown child in a decidedly white institution, a young man discovering queer culture and experiencing his first formative love affairs, a talented but often overlooked actor on the road with an experimental theater company, and an older Londoner whose late-in-life marriage fills his days with an unexpected sense of happiness and security. Moving in and out of Dave's orbit are the Hadlows. Estranged from his parents, who remain close to Dave, Giles directs his privilege into a career as a powerful right-wing politician whose reactionary vision for England pokes perilous holes in Dave's stability. As the story accelerates toward the present day, the two men's lives and values will finally collide in a cruel shock of violence. It reminds me a little bit of The Line of Beauty, which is Hollinghurst's Booker Prize winning novel, but it seems like it also has some twists on that form and is using it to sort of set up the contemporary state of politics that is honestly stressing me out. I don't know if it's stressing you out. And that sounds really interesting. I have kind of had mixed results with Alan Hollinghurst books as well, but I did like The Line of Beauty, and I'm willing to dive in and try another one as well. Next is Love Can't Feed You by Cherry Lou Tsai. Love Can't Find You is a stunning, heartbreaking, and compressed look at coming of age, shifting notions of home and the disintegration of the American dream. It asks us, what does it mean to be of multiple cultures without a roadmap for how to belong? After a harrowing flight, Queenie, her younger brother, and their elderly Chinese father arrive in the United States from the Philippines. They're here to finally reunite with Queenie's Filipina mother, who has been working as a nurse in Brooklyn for the past few years, building a life that everyone hopes will set them up for better prospects. But her mother is not the same woman she was in the Philippines. Something in her face is different, almost hardened, and she seems so American already. Queenie, on the cusp of adulthood, has big dreams of attending college, of spending her days immersed in the pages of books. But there is not enough money for her and her brother to both be in school, so first she must work. Queenie rotates through jobs and settles tentatively into her new life. But her brother begins to withdraw and act out, and her father's anger swells. As the pressures of assimilation compound and the fissures within her family deepen into fractures, Queenie is left suspended between two countries, two identities, and two parents. I mean, messy family story with an immigration story. I'm interested in that as well. Next is something that seems really interesting and like a bit of a curiosity. It's not a big book. It's The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. This will be released on October 22nd from Bloomsbury. It's only 64 pages, and it is illustrated as well. And this is set in the Jonathan Strange universe. So if you have read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, to me, I was a little infuriated reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell because it seems so long. But I really loved the Ladies of Grace Adieu, which is a story collection set within the world of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And this sort of ticks the same box. Or maybe you've read Piranesi, which was Susanna Clarke's Women's Prize winning novel. I have not read that one yet, but I want to catch up to it. So this seems like it'll be a fun little digestible thing, maybe a perfect gift for the holiday season. So, I mean, why not? Here's what it is about. 19-year-old Meredith Scott is an unusual girl. She can talk to animals and trees, and she is only ever happy when she is walking in the woods. One snowy afternoon, out with her dogs and Apple the pig, Meredith encounters a blackbird and a fox. As darkness falls, a strange figure enters their midst, and the path of her life is changed forever. Featuring gorgeous illustrations, truly worthy of the magic of this story, and an afterword by Susanna Clarke explaining how she came to write it, this is a mesmerizing must-have addition to any fantasy reader's bookshelf. So obviously it's not going to be like a long, engaging read, but if you want something short, maybe something as a gift idea, like a stocking stuffer, I'm intrigued. I am willing to go along with this and see what it is, where it goes, and that's that, really. Now we have Like Mother by Susan Rieger. Not a huge fan of the title, but the description of the book sounds really fascinating. This will be out October 29th by Dial Press. Detroit, 1960. Lila Pereira is 2 years old when her angry, abusive father has her mother committed to an asylum. Lila never sees her mother again. 3 decades later, having mustered everything she has, brains, charm, talent, blonde hair, Lila rises to the pinnacle of American media as the powerful, brilliant executive editor of the Washington Globe. Lila unapologetically prioritizes her career, leaving the rearing of her daughters to her generous husband, Joe. He doesn't mind, until he does. But Grace, their youngest daughter, feels abandoned. She wishes her mother would attend PTA meetings, not White House Correspondents' dinners. As she grows up, she cannot shake her resentment. She wants out from under Lila's shadow, yet the more she resists, the more Lila seems to shape her life. Grace becomes a successful reporter, even publishing a best-selling book about her mother. In the process of writing it, she realizes how little she knows about her own family. Did Lila's mother, Grace's grandmother, die in that asylum? Is refusal to look back the only way to create a future? How can you ever be yourself, Grace wonders, if you don't know where you came from? Spanning generations and populated by complex, unforgettable characters, Like Mother, is an exhilarating portrait of family, marriage, ambition, power, the stories we inherit, and the lies we tell to become the people we believe we were meant to be. I think you can see why that ticks a lot of my boxes. It sounds fascinating. That takes us to The Burrow by Melanie Cheng, which will be published on November 12th by Tin House Books. Tin House Books is an independent publisher that I have been following. Recently, they published Night of the Living Rez and Fire Exit by Morgan Talty, and a couple of other books that I have really enjoyed and which I have been interested in reading. Just a fun publisher for me to follow. So The Burrow sounds Let's just do the description. The Burrow follows members of the Lee family as they navigate grief and hope in their quiet Australian suburb. Jin, an emergency physician and father, Amy, a published author and mother, Lucy, their bookish and introverted 10-year-old, and Pauline, Amy's mother, who's trying to make amends. Racked with grief for Ruby, Lucy's baby sister, who died in a shocking accident, the family adopts a rabbit in the hopes of bringing much-needed cheer to their home. At first, each family member benefits from the distraction of a new and needy creature, but when a violent home invasion breaks their fragile sense of peace, the family is forced to confront the terrible circumstances surrounding Ruby's death. Atmospheric and tautly lyrical, Melanie Cheng's slim novel brings together 4 distinct perspectives and 1 wide-eyed rabbit to reveal the enormity of loss, long-buried family secrets, and how to survive in a newfound world after the ultimate tragedy. My main concern with this book is I really hope the rabbit is okay by the end. That's just me. But it's a short book. It's 160 pages. And again, it will be out November 12th from Tin House Books. It just sounds really interesting. So I'm going to go along with it and just hope that the rabbit is okay by the end of the book. Now we have a book called Time of the Child by Niall Williams. This will be published on November 19th by Bloomsbury. I wanted to read This Is Happiness by Niall Williams before we went to Ireland. I didn't manage to fit it in. I actually really want to get to that. So that's a book that is set in the town of Faha, and this book is also set in the town of Faha. So hopefully by November, I will have caught up to This Is Happiness, which I've heard really great things about, and will be ready to read this one as well. Dr. Jack Troy was born and raised in Faha, but his responsibilities for the sick and his care for the dying mean he has always been set apart from the town. His eldest daughter, Ronnie, has grown up in her father's shadow and remains there, having missed one chance at love and passed up another offer of marriage from an unsuitable man. But in the Advent season of 1962, as the town readies itself for Christmas, Ronnie and Dr. Troy's lives are turned upside down when a baby is left in their care. As the winter passes, father and daughter's lives, the understanding of their family, and their role in the community are changed forever. Set over the course of one December in the same village as Williams's beloved This Is Happiness, Time of the Child is a tender return to Faha for readers who know its charms, and a heartwarming welcome to new readers entering for the very first time. I need to catch up to This Is Happiness. I do want to read that one before I do this one, even though they don't seem like direct sequels. So I could just jump into this one. I don't know. We'll see what happens. If I've read This Is Happiness before November 19th, great. If I haven't, this might be a fun one to pick up. So we'll see. I've just heard such good things about This Is Happiness, and I would really like to catch up to it. We have two more. The next one might be a bit niche. It's Giant Love, Edna Ferber, her best-selling novel of Texas and the making of a classic American film. If you follow along, you know, last year I read Fanny Herself. And if you live in the UK, there's nothing I can do. It's a funny name for a book. I know. It is what it is. I loved that book, though, and I've been really looking forward to reading more of Edna Ferber, including the book Giant. She won a Pulitzer Prize for So Big, and I have been collecting a lot of her books. So she's an author I really want to get to know a lot more, and this is thrilling to me because it has a Pulitzer Prize connection, and it connects to an author I'm really excited to get to know a little bit more deeply. The stupendous publication of Edna Ferber's Giant in 1952 set off a storm of protest over the novel's portrayal of Texas manners, money, and mores, with oil-rich Texans threatening to shoot, lynch, or ban Ferber from ever entering the state again. In Giant Love, Julie Gilbert writes of the internationally best-selling Ferber, one of the most widely read writers in the first half of the 20th century. Her evolution from Midwest maverick girl reporter to Pulitzer Prize-winning, beloved American novelist, from her want-to-be actress days to becoming Broadway's acclaimed prize-winning playwright whose collaborators, George S. Kaufman and Moss Hart among them, were, along with Ferber herself, the most successful playwrights of the time. Here is the making of an American classic novel and the film that followed in its wake. We see how George Stevens, Academy Award-winning director, wooed the prickly, stubborn Ferber, ultimately getting her to agree to everything, including writing, for the first time ever, a draft of a screenplay, to her okaying James Dean for the part of the ranch hand, Jet Rink, something she was dead set against. Here is the casting of Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, James Dean, and their backstory triangle of sex and seduction, each becoming a huge star because of the film. The frustrated Stevens trying to direct the instinctive but undisciplined Dean, and the months-long landmark filming in the sleepy town of Marfa, Texas, suddenly invaded by a battalion of a film crew and some of the biggest stars and in the rising celebrity culture. So I know it's a bit niche to my interests, but I am so excited for that, and I'm so excited. I love old Hollywood movies as well, so a book that's kind of about that history tied to my Pulitzer fascination, like, it's the best of both worlds. So that will be out on December 3rd from Pantheon Books, and hopefully you are at least a little bit interested in it as I am. All right, our final book is The World with Its Mouth Open by Zahid Rafiq. This is also from Tin House Books, and it will be published on December 3rd. In 11 stories, The World with Its Mouth Open follows the inner lives of people in Kashmir as they walk the uncertain terrain of their days, fractured from years of war. From a shopkeeper's encounter with a mannequin, to an expectant mother walking on a precarious road, to a young boy wavering between dreams and reality, to two dogs wandering the city, these stories weave in larger, devastating themes of loss, grief, violence, longing, and injustice with the threads of smaller, everyday realities that confront the characters' lives in profound ways. Although the stories circle the darker aspects of life, they are, at the same time, an attempt to run into life, into humor, into beauty, into another person who can offer refuge, if momentarily. Zahid Rafiq's The World with Its Mouth Open is an original and powerful debut collection announcing the arrival of a new voice that bears witness to the human condition with nuance, heart, humor, and incredible insight. I think you can see exactly why I'm interested in that book. I know a lot of people are iffy on short stories. I've included a couple of them in here anyway because I like short stories. So this sounds like it would be a good and interesting collection from Tin House Books. So those are the books that I have singled out as the ones that I'm most interested in the rest of 2024. Again, I'll do a follow-up video where I talk about some of the books I'm a little more iffy on, and that will cover Richard Powers, Rumaan Alam, Sally Rooney, Haruki Murakami, and all of those. I would love to hear which of these books you are interested in, or if there are any other books coming out this year that you are waiting for. So just let me know which ones you responded to in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.